Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guest is Kelly Clark, who was inspired to start Kelly's Working Well Farm in order to create a place for members of the community to learn about permaculture and how to grow food and practice ways of living that benefit the earth, each other, and the other beings with which we share the planet, our home. She grew up in Northeast Ohio and has returned there to stay. She's grateful to have the opportunity to nurture the land and observe it as it becomes more productive with each passing year, and also how to turn it and nurture the spirits of those who spend time there. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
So give us a little bit, you spent 20 years teaching. What brought you from, the teaching world to the farming world?
Yeah, good question. So I have a science background. I was a science teacher, high school level, usually. But I think I always had an interest in gardening, although I wasn't a good gardener, and I always wanted to have chickens. But what was really influential to me was reading the book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. Mm-hmm. That book Michael Pollan wrote about our food system. And that was, I don't know if that was in 2008, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I just got very, very inspired, because I think one of the reasons is that food is something that everybody is involved in. Everyone participates in our food system, and everybody can make choice. Everyone makes choices every day about how to participate in our food system, if they have the ability to make those choices. And it felt like an area that I could really, make a small difference in, mm-hmm. at least at a local level.
So where did you start? With a piece of property? Did you find a piece of property? Talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Okay. So I read that book, and I really took a deep dive into learning as much as I could about our food system and growing food. And I was in the school where I was teaching, I had the opportunity to develop, they were looking for new curriculum. So I proposed and taught for a couple of years a course on the food system. And in that journey, I discovered permaculture. Mm-hmm. And at that point, permaculture it's basically a design philosophy that uses nature as a model. So, and then it has, various principles that you use to design, not just like food growing spaces, but also just living spaces and social spaces. And you can use it at any scale. But I think that's what inspired me to find some property so I could practice permaculture. I wanted kind of like a sandbox, to practice some of these ideas. And that was in 2012. By the time I found this property just down the street from where I lived at the time, and it had been abandoned. It was abandoned. It was 6 acres. There was a house there, hadn't been lived in 7 years, been on the market for a long time. And, but it was still like walking distance from our downtown area. So it was really, really an awesome piece of property. I was amazed. One of the reasons maybe it had sat on the market was because it was kind of a mess. Mm-hmm. The house was falling down, and it had been left with food in the refrigerator and dishes in the sink. And,
oh gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. They should have torn it down, but they didn't. And so I think nobody wanted to take that responsibility of dealing with that, an unlivable house. But anyway, yes. So we bought the land and with the idea of creating a community, community educational farm and a place to practice permaculture. And
So
we built
what year?
Sorry, go ahead.
What year was that?
So 2012.
Okay. Yep.
We closed in the summer, and by the following, and then one of the first things we did was besides getting animals, I knew that animals would be a real draw, for community members, especially kids. So we got chickens, we got some sheep and some goats to start with, and a couple of dogs. And we didn't live on the property. We were still down the street. So I kind of walked back and forth, and we built a pavilion that we were able to use the following summer to start with summer camp. So we offered a summer camp the summer of 2013. And that's kind of how we got going and how we were able to financially keep going.
So talk a little bit about the path to combining education into the farm. Was that from the start, you knew that's what you wanted, or did it kind of just start as you started to build the farm up?
It's kind of hard to remember like my state of mind when we first bought it, but I quickly realized that like we did do the summer camps that first year. So that was definitely having kids on the farm was part of that original vision. And as I had been an educator for my adult life. And then after the first couple years, I realized that I couldn't really be teaching full time at a regular school and develop the farm the way to its potential at all. And so I started thinking about that's when I started thinking about starting a school, a year-round program. And originally I sort of started developing like curriculum around the growing seasons and agriculture and nature. But a friend of mine pointed out to me this alternative educational model that was practiced by the Sudbury Valley School in Massachusetts, which is really it's self-directed, no formal curriculum kind of program. And, that really resonated with me because as a teacher, I was pretty frustrated generally in that I was pretty interested in what I was teaching and wanted to share that passion. But, the kids, they don't come in with it. They're not so enthusiastic about it all the time. If you remember, I don't know, being in school yourself, there's a lot of things you might look back and like, oh yeah, I probably would have liked that if I'd paid more attention. But, as a kid, you have your own interests and, having someone else tell you what to do all the time is not really that fun. So yeah. So anyway, and the other thing is is this model of education, the sort of self-directed learning / democratic school type of model is a lot closer to like a permaculture design type of model. It's a lot more similar to in any natural system. Kids naturally want to learn. They grow up. I see you have, is that a daughter or a son in your photo?
Well, yeah, that's my son. I now have a daughter who's 7, a 5-year-old, that guy who's now 5, and a daughter who's 10 months. Yeah.
So, you saw your kids teach themselves how to talk basically and walk and ask tons of questions and be so interested in everything. And I think we put them in school and we kind of squelch that natural curiosity that they have. And we sort of give them a lot of negative messages about their own ability to learn in that setting, because they have to they have to sit quietly, and they, they're tested, and
Yeah.
all of this.
So that's interesting because you went from like a career educator. So was there some resistance as you kind of realized that there was a different model that you could be using?
Well, it was certainly not a model I could use in the school where I was teaching.
Correct.
And the last year when I was in that school, and I had already sort of been converted to this new model, I would go in there and I would just be like looking at the kids, and I'd be like, I'm really sorry. Like, this is not, I can see how unhappy you are. And they were so stressed. This was at a private school, pretty high pressure for the kids. And it's a very stressful environment for them. And, my empathy had gone way up after sort of looking at it from a different perspective. So it was kind of hard for me to continue to, give grades and assign homework and be like, I know you've got 10 million other things to do, and here I am just adding to it. And, my experience over 20 years of teaching was that they're not really learning a whole lot. I could tell that from the final exams, and and I don't blame the kids. It's the system. Like, why should they care about this stuff? It's not relevant to their life right now. It may be in the future, but not at the moment.
So that's an interesting point, is that so often we look at this curriculum, which is geared to, well, we think it's a well-rounded education, but in essence, we're just forcing facts on them, when what they're really interested, we're not really letting them read and do their own self-learning.
Yeah. And yet what I find, with kids that are not in that environment is they have many passions, and those passions lead them to acquire those skills on their own, or with help that they ask for, that, is a lot more painfully learned in a regular school environment.
So share with us a little bit about, like, when we get the kids on the farm, kind of what's your modus for teaching, or how do you kind of like guide them?
Yeah. So my personal way so we have a group of kids, mixed ages, they're on the farm, they're doing, they're mostly playing. Free play is really, I think, the highest form of learning, right? That's how they've evolved to learn, is they play and they explore and they challenge themselves and they get curious and they ask questions. So my role is to be doing things on the farm that are meaningful. I think that kids like to look to the adults around them as examples of what's important, and then when they see that the adults are interested in something, then they want to learn more about that thing. So like, if we're sitting there on our devices all day, the kids naturally are going to want to be on their devices all day too. So for what I like to do on the farm is model meaningful activity. So I'm taking care of the animals, I'm planting trees, I'm harvesting fruits or vegetables, I'm making jam, maybe I'm doing like some crafts based on like using wool from the sheep, and I'm trying to basically manage the farm.
So let's move into the farm side of things. Talk us through kind of what are the different enterprises, or different, you got some animals. I saw in a picture here, you're doing some drying, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's dehydrator. So we're a small, diverse farm. So it's basically, we're doing almost a little bit of everything, but not a lot of any one thing. So we're not focused on any one product. With permaculture, you have a lot more emphasis on perennials. So, and creating a system where the different elements work together. So in the beginning, our revenue stream was primarily coming from the summer camps. And that really gave us, that was actually, they were successful enough that it helped us develop our infrastructure. So we were able to build a few more buildings and, fencing and, those kind of things. The year-long program, which is now called the Chagrin Valley Learning Collective, also brought in some revenue, but then that had a lot of costs in terms of staffing and so on. But our long-term model, I'm thinking about some sort of, maybe some sort of like a membership where people can join the community and for like a monthly fee, and then come maybe once a week or every so often and harvest whatever's in season. And we would provide support by showing what's growing, what's in season, what you can do with it, and so on. So we're starting to get a lot of fruit. We have strawberries, we have black raspberries, red raspberries, golden raspberries, currants, elderberries. And moving forward, every year we're going to have more different, kinds of fruits and nuts available, sort of, almost like a foraging kind of thing. You can walk around through our orchard, which we call a food forest, because it's just going to have so much food in it, but all sorts of different kinds of things.
So then the drying, talk to us a little bit about this dehydrator you got.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, dehydration, I'm really into food preservation of all sorts, right? So canning, freezing, fermenting, and dehydrating. Those are all different. Some of the advantages of fermentation and dehydration is they don't require a lot of energy, So like canning, you have to have, you have to have high heat, and you heat up the jars until they get a seal. Freezing, you have to have a freezer that you're running all the time, and it's limited in space. So the nice thing about fermenting is you can just do it at room temperature, and then dehydration, in that picture is a solar dehydrator. So you can actually, dehydrate fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, even meat, so that you can do long-term storage without needing electricity. So, it's kind of nice.
And what kinds of things are you dry in there typically?
To tell you the truth, that dehydrator, we're still experimenting with it. So right now I do have an electric dehydrator also that I use. But I dehydrate, any kind of fruit. And then you can reuse them later. Like you can throw them in like oatmeal, or even rehydrate them and make them into baked goods. Vegetables are awesome. Like you can do onions, you can do peppers, tomatoes, and then easily throw them into a stew or a soup later in the wintertime. Even you can even dehydrate like peas. Eggplant dehydrates really nicely. All sorts of vegetables, and there's a lot you can do with it.
So talk us through the animals. The animals are there. Do you butcher any of them for meat, or are they more there for, okay.
Yeah. That's part of the idea, is that they're not pets, right? Every animal has a sort of a role to play. We do chickens. We have both chickens that we have layers, and we also do right now the past 2 years we've done 4 rounds of meat chickens. So we start with we do order, we'll order 100 or so, chicks, day old chicks, and then
Mm-hmm.
raise them up. They're usually we use the Freedom Ranger, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the Freedom Ranger chicken. So it's not like the
Yeah.
the super Frankenstein chicken, but they also do grow much faster than your typical like heritage breed.
Yeah. And I'm looking here at your pictures of the chickens and they look really nice. The finished product looks really nice. You put them in the
Yeah.
shrink wrap bags and
Yes.
yeah.
So so one of the things that's sort of part of our model is inviting other people to get involved in farm projects. And so the meat chickens are actually a project mainly led by a friend of mine, Jim Demko. And so he sort of takes on the responsibility of ordering the chickens, organizing just determining, what the dates are going to be that we raise them. He makes sure that the chicken tractors are functioning and fixed and repaired, and organizes the processing. And I help him with the sales, and I also help with daily. Like, since I'm here at the farm every day, I usually do the evening chores, moving. So with the chickens, we have them in tractors, about 30 chickens per tractor, which we move twice a day. So we move them in the morning and the evening and feed them. So they're on pasture. And yeah, we process them on the farm and market them, and people come to the farm to pick them up. And yeah, we have the shrink wrap and all that stuff is pretty nice.
So talk to us a little bit about the sheep. So you're using those for some meat, but you're also using the wool.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing also we do with the sheep is we do the rotational grazing, right? So they're also moved throughout the farm every day. So every day they're in a new spot, which really helps to, well, for one thing, they get fresh pasture every day, and they're also spreading out their manure, and it's been kind of amazing. We've been doing this for almost 10 years, and you can really see every year the pasture is growing more and more lush. The soil is softer, it's easier to push the posts in. This year the pasture grew so fast that I feel like we're going to need to come in and cut hay in between, because I can't get them around fast enough.
Yeah. So it's just growing that fast, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the first year I was like, oh, is 6 weeks long enough for this patch to regrow? Now it's so grown that I feel like, yeah, we need to come in and manage, other that need more. So that's been really, really awesome. And then we just have 4 ewes and a ram. And mainly we don't sell the meat from the lamb. Usually we just kind of distribute it among family members, because that's a whole nother, because we do the on-farm processing, and we can't legally sell meat that we've processed from a larger animal that we've processed on the farm.
There's a poultry exemption, but any red meat is different.
Yeah. Poultry, I think you can do rabbits, turkeys, chickens, ducks, on the farm and sell from the farm, but not the larger animals. But we do like to do educational workshops. So, we'll invite people to come, and we'll show them, we'll show them how to, and have them participate in the process if they want. Do that for the chickens and the sheep, and we've done it for pigs too.
Okay. And what breed of pigs do you have?
Well, in the past, we've just done like feeder pigs, where I've gotten some feeder pigs, the auction, raise them for the season, harvest them, in the late fall or winter. But last year we got 3 American guinea hogs.
Okay.
And 2 females and a male, all related. We harvested the male in like January.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, the lard on this animal was incredible. Lots of lard. And then we just, and then this spring we got an unrelated boar, and now our females are pregnant. So we're going to do that for the first time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thriving farmers, each year we are faced with two important investment decisions. We should be investing in systems that increase productivity and in inputs that develop soil. In December of 2020, I was introduced to a seed, soil, and foliar prebiotic treatment. This product is called Ultra. Ultra is an OMRI-listed prebiotic formula manufactured by AgriGrow. I have personally been running several trials testing Ultra on my farm. I'm impressed. Ultra increased our strawberry yield production by 18%. On a 900 square foot trial, $6 in product cost returned me $868 worth of marketable strawberries. We also had decade-old heirloom corn seed that I have been trying to germinate with no success. In a Hail Mary attempt with my remaining few seeds, I soaked them overnight in a diluted solution of Ultra. They germinated. If you would like to try Ultra or any other AgriGrow product, I believe this would be a worthwhile investment on your farm. Here's the best news yet. AgriGrow has agreed to offer a 10% discount to all thriving farmer listeners. Simply use the coupon code THRIVE when you check out. Again, that is THRIVE for a 10% off discount on your first order. Head to smallfarm.solutions to order today. So talk to us a little bit about some of the struggles you've had while starting the farm.
Well, I mean, the biggest struggle would be the one that came down on us when the township came in, and they were upset that we had kids on the farm, and accused us of operating a school, which actually our program is not a school because it doesn't have a curriculum. And so instead, all of our family members are registered as homeschoolers, all our participants. So, but they didn't like it. They wanted us to have all buildings that had occupancy permits. And so that's taken a long time. They came in the fall of 2019 and closed us down. They said, you can't have people on the farm. Nobody from the public can come on the farm. And that they were able to hold us off for about 2.5 years. And then we finally got a judge involved, and she was like, wait a minute, you have to, this has to be justified and all this stuff. So we were able, and see, they were hanging us on saying we had to have occupancy permits. And the judge was like, well, it's a farm, like they can't get occupancy permits. And we had said the same thing, like local in Ohio, the county building department will not come and inspections. They will not give us permits. So the township had put us in this catch-22 of you have to get permits. And we're like, but we can't. And they're like, oh, well, too bad for you.
Yeah, we're fighting the exact same thing right now with our thing. I mean, thankfully, I just do what I want and they have to catch up.
Right.
I mean, my lawyer basically, Anyway, but
we're getting to that, we're getting to that position because we were able to finally demonstrate that our outdoors at least is doesn't have any hazards. So we're allowed to have people on the farm, and they still want us to undergo some inspections to resolve what their concerns, but we definitely have more leverage now. Where it's more like they said, oh, you can't do your summer camp because that's not really agritourism. And we're like, well,
yes,
baloney, it is, and we're going to do it. And so we can do it because the judge has said, if it's safe, if you can't prove that it's dangerous, then you can't keep people off the farm. So we're like, sorry guys, we're doing it. Yeah. And same with our year-round program, because we're going to be like, hey, you can't shut us down anymore because we demonstrate we don't have hazards. So it's on you now to prove that what we're doing is not agritourism, and good luck with that.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, because you are a farm. I mean, the fact that you're growing plants and you have sheep and you have chickens and you're producing food.
The big thing that we did not have before is I hadn't in the first couple of years been documenting farm sales. So that bit us, and in the beginning you're like, well, it's going to cost me more to market and get these sales than the revenue I'm going to bring in. But that but looking back on, that's probably the thing I would have spent more energy on, is going ahead and selling things, getting that. We only need 2,500 annually gross revenue. That could have made a difference. I'm not sure, because they, but I would say, yeah, if you can get that, it's called the CAUV status here, you should try to do that, even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense at the moment.
Yeah. Get all set up and make sure it is, so that you can prove it. Yeah.
No one can question that you're a farm.
So, also it seemed like, because I read through, I think you worked with a nonprofit organization that provides some of the legal support. Walk us through the different people involved.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate in that when when they first came to the farm, they're like, oh, you're operating a school. And we're like, no, it's not a school really. And then they're like, well, you need to be licensed in some way. And they couldn't find any way of licensing us. We really do not fall under any clear category with what we're doing. And then they just came all of a sudden a couple months later and shut us down. And at that point, Jim, my partner in meat chickens, was harvesting, doing a workshop at another farm. And he met this woman who was a lawyer, and she's like, oh, we're an environmental lawyer, and we're a nonprofit, and we might be able to help. So so we had that legal team, which has been really helpful, not charging us the typical rate that you would get from a lawyer. So that was huge.
So, but you said they did shut you down for a while. So did you have to go back to work, or how were you able to make things keep working?
Well, we definitely upped, the farm sales of stuff, because and we got a lot of donations that allowed us to pay the mortgage. We were actually a nonprofit ourselves, so we were able to do some fundraising. And the other thing is, over the years with the camps and the educational program, we had built up a community of support, and that was really important. And we were able to appeal to people and get some donations that really got us through.
Yeah, when a couple of years ago, we had a zoning thing that we were working with, and we needed some variances, and we had over 500 people sign the petition, and we had over 100 comments, and I was able to print that entire stack off, and it was literally a book full of stuff, and I was able to bring it into the planning meeting and just hand it to the people, and it sure changed the tune that was going on there.
Yeah, I think that's we've been able to tell that story, that that we're a really valuable part of the community, and a lot of people rely on us as a place, especially like kids really like to come to the farm. And I just think it was unfortunate we had to be closed during much of COVID, because I think it would have been an ideal place for to spend time.
Yeah, get out, get some of that stress. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super important.
Connect with nature,
Yeah. So talk us through what's the future hold for the farm?
Well, I think it's just we're sort of getting back into it. We're having summer camps for the first time in the last couple of years, which is exciting to have people back on the farm. We still have to resolve some of the issues with the buildings before we can get the buildings opened up. But looking in the future, and although this time of sort of not being in normal operations, we've used to do get a lot of plants in the ground, a lot of trees in the ground. And every year there's just going to be more stuff coming, more fruits, more perennial, nuts and things. So that's exciting. I do want to embark, we'll get the program back on the farm. It hasn't, the year-long program has been off-site. So we're planning on bringing it back in the fall. So that'll be nice, having people on the farm year round. And then, I want to build a building that is a community. I want to build a community center building, have a, kitchen, a commercial kitchen, a nice big area for people to gather, have events, community events, stuff like that. So that'll be our next phase, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So talk to us about the few ways that you've incorporated permaculture, because I know that's something that you said really you resonated with you when you were founding the farm.
Yes. Well, in terms of the farm, I think the rotational grazing, we've used some permaculture methods for managing water.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our food forest orchard is on a slope, a pretty good slope, and so we've
Mm-hmm.
dug swales, which are ditches on contour.
Mm-hmm.
So you dig ditches on contour, and then you create a berm at the low side of the ditch, and that's where you plant your trees and your shrubs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been fun. That's been a fun project. And then even just in terms of designing the educational program and how things work together, it's all kind of permaculture too, like really really designing systems that do not need to be managed intensively, but sort of manage themselves ultimately. You may have a lot of work up front getting the elements in place, but once they're in place, they sort of work together without as much management. That's sort of the goal. One of the goals of permaculture.
Yeah. Now, with the farm being located, so you're not in this town, you're in the township, I think you said, right?
Yes. Well, it's a little weird because we're in this Bainbridge Township, but we're actually really close to a different town.
Okay.
The county line is right the street. We're on the county line.
Yeah.
So the town that we're close to is not the township.
Okay.
So that's kind of weird too, because in a way we appeal more to folks that are not necessarily in the townships that's going after us.
Yeah. But like, you have 6 acres there. Is land surrounding you? Is that all like houses, or is it more farmland?
Yeah, we're actually we're kind of uniquely located. Across the street is a cemetery.
Okay.
And to the north side, it is, you have more houses, especially as you go in toward town. But on the other side of our other neighbor is a big, a rather large retirement community.
Okay.
So they have like 60 acres, and they have, everything from assisted living and to like condominiums and so on. So it's kind of it's not really country, but it's not really a neighborhood. We're kind of like an edge location.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is interesting because in permaculture, edges are very productive spaces, because they've got little elements of each, like the edge between a forest and a field has got like some forest components and some field components, and it's where they kind of combine and create a whole new ecosystem.
Yeah. Now, what kind of wild animals do you see on the farm?
So there's a lot of deer around and raccoons, and we do see foxes every once in a while. Now we have a couple of livestock guard animals. They're Great Pyrenees crossed with Saint Bernard. And we do have a perimeter fence around 5 acres, and so we can let the dogs come out and roam for an hour or so in the evening and in the morning. And I think that really helps with the foxes and the coyotes. So, and we also use electric fencing, electronet fencing for the sheep and the goats and the chickens. So we've been really fortunate. And I think with having, the diversity and the dogs and the perimeter fence and then the electric fencing and also having people on the farm, all those things I think have really helped us with the predators.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously those are going to go after your chickens and sheep and all of that.
Yes.
We don't have those animals yet. We have a ton of groundhogs or woodchucks and rabbits. And then just yesterday we saw a fox, or maybe I think it was maybe a coyote for the first time.
Yeah.
But we're within city limits, so that was kind of crazy to me. But we are 8 acres, so there's plenty of places for them to hide and for them to move around. Right. So, yeah. Well, share with us a little bit about like your marketing, because I know obviously you're building a farm that's a little bit of a different farm than a lot. So what has your marketing looked like?
Well, I mean, that's certainly not been my favorite part of the whole thing.
Okay.
But we started, we had a lot of events. Like we would have a big pig roast in the fall and invite people to the farm. And then we would, establish a mailing list. I do use MailChimp, which is nice. And so you can get that email list. And with MailChimp, then when you can automatically, when you write your newsletter, so I try to write a newsletter every couple weeks and post that on Facebook and Instagram. And so then you can actually get people signing up for the newsletter from those, outlets. But I would have to say, like, sort of, it's really been mostly word of mouth when it comes down to it. Like when people come and you say, well, how did you find out about us? It's like, oh, I heard about from this person and they said that I should come and see the farm. And, so that's the story that most people tell when they come, is that they met someone who told them about the farm and said they had to come and see it.
Yeah. People just love the unique farm that you've built and they just want to share it.
Yes. Yeah. We've created a very special place. Like when people walk onto the farm, it just feels, and the other thing we haven't even talked about is the natural building, and that's another sort of permaculture thing is using, natural materials for buildings. And early on, probably in 2014, I was made contact with a guy who does natural building, and he just, he lives in the area, just about 25 minutes away from the farm. And immediately, and I'd had my feelers out for that, and amazingly that there was someone who lived so close. And so we started with, we built a pizza oven, we built a little cottage, we built a larger building, and those have just created a space that has it's just a very comfortable, appealing space. Having.
And does that building have a living roof?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, if you go to your Facebook, which is Kelly's Working Well Farm, you can see pictures of that. It's really cool.
Yeah. And we have a few different buildings, and they don't all have living roofs, but they're all like made of cob, which is basically clay, like locally sourced clay and straw, and it's very, very sort of traditional building methods, like ancient, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So people really enjoy seeing that. And then do you do things like mushroom workshops at all, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do mushroom inoculation, or like I said, we'll do like the chicken processing, where we invite people to teach them how to do that. Also, one of the things that we're hoping to do more of is do like consultations. So I can go to someone's house and we can spend an hour walking around and talking about like how they can incorporate, maybe edible landscaping, or if they want to try to, have chickens, or, what kinds of things they can grow, how they can manage it. And so we're, a lot of things we try on the farm, but then also we can then say, help you do this on your property.
Yeah. There's a lady here in the Dayton area that does incredibly well with that. She'll take pictures, she'll write up a report. We just don't have the bandwidth for what we're doing here, but that is a very cool service that I know is probably very helpful. Because people just don't know. They don't. They obviously didn't grow up this way, and they just need support to be able to make it happen. And they're very excited to be able to support those who do have that knowledge.
I think it's fun to see. I think the interest is just increasing, from people.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun.
What is your favorite tool on the farm?
Tool. I don't know. I mean, I guess my pruners.
Okay.
I started carrying them around a year or so ago, and that's been huge. Just always having them as I'm walking around. And one thing I do with the pruners is I try to do a lot of feeding the rabbits and the goats and sheep with little cuttings. So if I go back and I'll see little branch sticking out. Well, okay, I'm going to cut that and I'm going to go throw that into the rabbits and they're going to enjoy it. But yeah, the pruners would be my favorite. I would say the thing I do use the most.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Kelly, and sharing your story. It's really cool to hear what you've built. And again, it's such a different farm than so many of our guests build, because they're building, really production farm, but you've really taken, yes, you're doing production, but you're doing so much education, which I think is also such a huge part of the movement we're building, is just kind of educating the world on, how this kind of farming works. So so thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.